All right, get ready, because today we're going deep into multidimensional arrays, specifically in PowerBASIC.
Multidimensional arrays, yeah.
You know how a chessboard has rows and columns? Well, imagine if it could also track how high each piece is floating above the board.
Okay, I see.
That's kind of what we're talking about today.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
We're going to be looking at a transcript from like an introductory video on multidimensional arrays.
Okay.
And I think it's going to be really cool, especially if you're into programming.
Yeah, sure.
Or just like into how data is organized.
Right.
Or if you just like those moments where you're like, whoa.
Like those aha moments. Yeah. The cool thing is arrays are pretty intuitive. Like we deal with lists and grids all the time in life. Well, think about it like this.
Okay.
The video gives this example of like employee names.
Okay.
So let's say you've got like 4 employees and you need to keep track of their names. So instead of having like a variable called like employee 1, employee 2, employee 3.
Right.
You can use a single dimensional array.
Okay.
Think of it like a list, a numbered list.
Okay.
Where like each slot can hold a name.
Okay. And then how do you access like a specific name within that?
It's super easy. You just use the array name and the number, the slot number.
Okay.
So like if you wanted to get the 3rd employee's name,
right,
you just write employees 3.
Gotcha. So like taking that a step further,
yeah,
how do we go from like a simple list like that to something more complex, like our chessboard example?
Exactly, yeah. So think of the chessboard, right? It's like an 8x8 grid. So each square on the board has an address, right? Defined by its row and its column.
Okay, so instead of like a single list, we now have a list of lists.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Okay.
Like each row on the chessboard is its own list.
Okay.
And so in a 2-dimensional array, each piece of data, it has a location. It's identified by its row and column coordinates.
Okay.
So it's like a super organized map where you can pinpoint any piece of information.
I'm already thinking about like spreadsheets, game development.
Of course, yeah.
Like where this structure would be so useful.
I mean, spreadsheets use this all the time. Each cell has an address based on its row and column.
Yeah.
And in game development, you can imagine like a game map.
Right.
You know, it's represented as a 2D array. It allows you to track the location of objects, characters, that kind of thing.
Okay, that's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But there's more.
There is more.
The video mentioned a 3rd dimension.
Right.
What is this?
So now things get really interesting. So think of our chessboard, right?
Okay.
But this time, imagine each piece also has a height above the board.
Okay.
So like imagine we're tracking a drone or something.
Okay.
We need to know not just where it is on the grid, but also like its altitude.
Wow.
So that's the 3rd dimension. So now each point in our array, it needs 3 coordinates, row, column, and height.
So it's like adding a whole new layer of information to our chessboard.
Exactly. And then think of the possibilities, right? Not just for drones.
Yeah.
Like anything you want to track in 3D space.
Right.
It's like we've gone from a flat map to a 3D world.
It's crazy. And get this, PowerBASIC allows up to 8 dimensions.
I know, it's wild, right?
What?
It is, though, to be honest. I mean, going beyond 3 or 4 dimensions is pretty rare. It gets complex really fast.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's hard enough for us to visualize 4 dimensions, let alone 8.
Yeah, I can only imagine. But it's exciting to know that the potential is there.
Yeah, for sure.
So we talked about how these arrays are structured. But what kind of information can they actually hold?
Yeah.
Is it just numbers, or can we store other types of data in there too?
Oh, no. Arrays are super versatile. They can hold lots of different types of data. Numbers, obviously. Strings of text, like remember our employee names? They're strings.
Yeah.
You can even have something called user-defined types.
Ooh. User-defined types.
UDTs for short.
Okay, those sound interesting. Tell me more about those.
Now, this is where things get really powerful.
Okay.
User-defined types let you combine different data types into one single unit.
Okay.
So, like, imagine, let's stick with our car dealership example.
Okay.
We could create a UDT called vehicle to store all the important details about each car.
Okay.
So instead of just having a list of car models, you could have an array where each element contains a whole bunch of information about each car.
Okay, I see.
Model, color, the number of doors, the engine type,
Right.
and the sale price, obviously.
It's like having a custom data structure that's perfect for what you need.
Exactly, yeah. It's really good for organizing and manipulating data. So like, imagine you want to find all the convertibles in your inventory. It's as simple as looking at the vehicle type field of each element and seeing if it matches convertible.
Right.
So much easier than sifting through all these separate variables.
And since all that information about each car is like bundled together,
Exactly.
you can do some really interesting analysis, right?
Of course.
Like calculate the average price of all the convertibles.
Yeah, exactly. Or like sort all your vehicles by engine size, or generate a report that lists all the red convertibles with V8 engines. The possibilities are like endless.
It's like a data analysis superpower.
It is. It is a superpower, yeah. And I mean, think about it. This is not just car dealerships.
Right.
Like anytime you're dealing with complex data, right, that has multiple attributes,
Yeah.
UDTs are super useful. Managing customer information, keeping track of items in a shopping cart, it makes your code more organized, readable, and efficient.
Yeah. Okay. This has started to click for me.
Yeah.
Before we get like too carried away with UDTs. Let's take a step back and talk about like the bigger picture of data storage, right?
Right.
We've talked about saving arrays to files to databases.
Yeah.
Like how does that actually work?
Yeah, it's important to remember when we create an array, it lives in the computer's memory,
Right.
which is temporary storage.
Okay.
So we need to save that data to a more permanent location. Otherwise, poof, it's gone when we close the program.
Like if you're working on a spreadsheet and don't hit save.
Exactly.
Ouch.
So we got to hit save.
Yeah.
We need to store our arrays somewhere safe.
Okay. So how do we do that? Is it files, databases? What are the options?
Well, we've got a couple of ways.
Okay.
We can save the array data to a file. We can use what's called a binary method. It's kind of like taking a snapshot of the whole array, saving it as one big chunk of data.
Okay.
Or we can do a sequential method where we save each record one by one.
Oh, so like one's like a single filing cabinet and the other one's like individual folders.
Yeah, exactly. Good analogy. And it just depends how you need to access the data later.
Right.
Binary is faster for loading the whole array.
Yeah.
Sequential lets you access individual records more easily.
Gotcha. And then what about databases? We talked about them being like giant spreadsheets.
Right. So databases, they're great for managing lots of structured data.
Okay.
They let us organize the data into tables, which are kind of like arrays themselves,
Okay.
but with more features and flexibility.
So it's like arrays on steroids.
Haha. Yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
So you can use databases to store your UDTs.
Okay.
And it allows you to search, sort, analyze your data in ways that would be really hard with just files.
Right. Right.
They're designed for efficiency, data storage, retrieval, manipulation. I mean, they're like the backbone of a lot of applications like online stores, social media.
It's really interesting seeing how we've gone from like these basic lists to like these really complex structures
Yeah,
and ways to store them.
for sure. It shows you how versatile and fundamental arrays are. Yeah.
They're not just about storing information.
Right.
They're about organizing it,
Yeah.
accessing it efficiently, using it to solve problems and build really powerful applications.
It's like we're uncovering the secret language of computers.
Uh-huh.
So let's dig into how these UDTs work in PowerBASIC.
Okay, sure.
The video used that car dealership inventory example.
Yeah.
I think it's a good one.
Yeah, it's a perfect example for showing this.
Absolutely.
So let's say we want to create a UDT called vehicle to store all the important stuff about each car.
Right.
How would we do that?
Okay, so in PowerBASIC, we would use the type statement
Okay.
to define that structure.
Gotcha.
So it's like we're creating a blueprint
Okay.
that says what kind of information our UDTs going to hold.
All right. So what would go into that blueprint?
Well, we'd need the model name, the number of doors, engine type, vehicle type, like is it a sedan, an SUV,
Yeah.
convertible, things like that.
Okay.
And of course, the price.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
And the great thing about UDTs is we can mix different data types within that structure.
Right. Right.
So model would be a string, doors would be an integer,
Yes.
engine type could be another string, and so on.
Okay. So then once you have that structure defined,
Yeah.
you could create an array of that UDT
Right.
where each element in the array is a single vehicle.
Exactly.
So it's like we have an array, but each element isn't just one piece of data. It's like a whole package of information
Exactly. It's a little bundle.
about that car.
Yeah.
All organized neatly.
Makes it super easy to work with.
So if you wanted to find all the convertibles, for example.
Yeah, you just look at the vehicle type field
Uh-huh.
of each element in the array
Right.
and see if it says convertible.
Right. That's so much more efficient
It is so much cleaner.
than like trying to go through a bunch of separate variables.
Yeah, and because it's all bundled together,
Yeah.
you could do a lot of cool analysis.
You could find the average price of all the convertibles.
Yeah, you could sort by engine size, create reports.
The possibilities.
They're endless.
Yeah. So it seems like this would be helpful in a lot of situations.
Absolutely.
Not just a car dealership.
Yeah. Anytime you're working with data that has a lot of attributes,
Yeah.
UDTs can be a game changer.
Okay.
Like think about customer data
Okay.
or shopping carts on a website.
You can model all sorts of things with this.
Makes your code better.
Yeah. More organized, easier to read.
Okay, so this is making sense to me.
Good. Matrices, those grids of numbers from algebra class.
Yeah. Yeah, so a matrix is basically a way of organizing numbers in rows and columns.
Wow.
So you can kind of think of it like a spreadsheet.
Oh, okay.
And just like you can use a spreadsheet to track and manipulate data,
Right.
in math, matrices can be used for all sorts of things,
Right.
like solving systems of equations or modeling transformations in space.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the spreadsheet analogy really helps.
Good.
But I'm still a little fuzzy on how this actually gets implemented in programming.
Right.
Like, how do you go from a mathematical concept to actual lines of code?
Well, that's where arrays come in.
The arrays, okay.
So in programming, an array is basically a way to store a collection of data.
Got it.
So this would be like a list of numbers or a list of names. But the key thing is you can structure an array to represent a matrix.
Oh, I see.
So each element in the array corresponds to a cell in that matrix.
So it's like you're taking that spreadsheet and you're turning it into like a digital version that the computer can understand.
Exactly, yeah.
So then if I have an array in my code, I can basically treat it like a matrix.
Yeah.
And actually like do mathematical operations on it. Like I could add two matrices together or multiply them or whatever.
That's right.
Wow.
And PowerBASIC actually has this really cool command. It's called MAT. And it lets you perform these operations directly within your code.
Oh, wow.
So you don't have to write out all the individual calculations.
I see.
It just handles it for you.
Okay.
It's really powerful.
That sounds incredibly useful, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like I can already imagine how much time and effort that could save you.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you're working with lots of data.
Exactly.
So give me an example.
Sure.
Like, how would this actually be used in a real-world scenario?
Okay, so imagine you're a game developer and you're working with 3D graphics. You need to be able to move those objects around in space, right?
Right.
Rotate them, scale them, things like that. Well, you can use matrices to represent the position and orientation of those objects.
Okay.
And then by manipulating those matrices, you can control how they move.
Wow.
So using the MAT command, you can easily perform these transformations.
I see.
Without having to write out tons of complex calculations yourself.
So instead of writing like pages and pages of code to get an object to move a certain way, you can just use MAT in a matrix.
Exactly.
And it's just done.
Yeah, it's much more efficient.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So is this like just used in game development or are there other applications?
Oh no, matrices are used all over the place.
Really?
Yeah, things like machine learning, data analysis.
Oh, wow.
Even image processing. They're really versatile.
So basically, anytime you're dealing with large amounts of data and you need to perform complex calculations, matrices can be a really powerful tool.
Exactly.
Multidimensional arrays, I mean, who knew they were so powerful?
Right. They're everywhere once you start looking for them.
Exactly. And we've seen how they work, the types of data they can hold.
Even how to save that data so we don't lose it. And PowerBASIC makes it even easier to use them.
It does. And the fact that PowerBASIC supports up to 8 dimensions, well, that just blows my mind.
I know. Even though we rarely go beyond 3 or 4, it's still amazing to think about the potential.
It makes you wonder what kind of problems we could solve if we could wrap our heads around 8 dimensions.
Who knows? Maybe there's some problem out there just waiting for someone to figure out how to use arrays to model it.
Quantum physics, maybe? Simulating complex systems. The possibilities are endless.
That's what's so exciting about exploring this stuff. It's not just about learning the technical details, it's about expanding our imagination.
And that's a great note to end on. Arrays are more than just data storage. They're a way of thinking about and solving problems in a whole new way.
Absolutely.
So to our listeners, we challenge you to think about how you can use multidimensional arrays and UDTs in your own life.
Maybe create a program to track your personal finances or design a game with a multidimensional world.
Even if you never write a line of code, just understanding the basics of arrays can help you appreciate how computers work and how we use them to understand the world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
That's it for our deep dive into multidimensional arrays. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.